Just in terms of, Mr. Tarun Kapoor was also supposed to join us this morning. He sent a message that he can't make it despite his intent. The simple reason is that this is a real busy season as India goes into election season in the next few months. In fact, some of the state elections are starting up as early as December. So that is what is happening in the backdrop. So Mr. Kapoor could not be there. So what we're going to do is take no more than 45 odd minutes, or maybe even less if we have to kind of go through some of those themes. And rather than my doing all the talking, I would encourage the people in the audience to ask this panel about their views. And more or less, we are going to focus on policy actions, so to speak. All of them have deep policy exposure and expertise. So, more or less going to speak on the policy actions. I'm just hoping this is all done. Should we just assume chairs? So may I call upon the final panel today to come on the stage. Dr. Jain, Shri Alok Kumar, Shri Gurdeep Singh, and Dr. Srivastava. Please come and join us. So, just to mention, we have had a fascinating 2 days, and I'm not going to take you through exactly what happened because that's impossible. Even if we manage to do it in the post-conference documentation to capture the spirit of it is going to be, very interesting. But I'm going to tell you what themes broadly we covered and some of the sentiments which at least I took away, and maybe we'll ask the audience to come and come in and talk about it. So the first, what we did differently this time is that we started with the Global Leaders 2050 coming together. This is a very different change in accent because Enrich has been always a senior forum, so to speak. I don't think we managed to bend it all the way. In the next editions, I would want intergenerational panels to be here, maybe moderators from the next generation rather than me doing this session over here. But I think we made a start. And a few things started coming out. The first thing is that, the biggest thing which I think is that the youth have all the ideas, okay, but they really do not have a seat on the thing. They might have a voice, but they really don't have a seat in the decision-making process. And if you go upstairs and see the innovation which the youth of our country doing, from crop residues producing batteries which are substitutes for lithium cells using biological processes, biogenic processes, urban mining, fantastic stuff which is happening, and so on and so forth. And these startups haven't even started generating revenues. And yet the amount of innovation we are seeing is fantastic. So they are solving the problems for us, and yet we do not have them have a voice in the decision-making process. Now, I just wanted to start with that. So rather than my trying to recount all the sessions in one go, we'll take theme by theme and ask your views, any of you, about your views about whether you see this as a problem or am I imagining a problem? Leena?
Thank you, Anish. I think great question to start with. I do believe that the youth have not just all the ideas, but also the commitment. And, it's their future that we are talking about. So absolutely agree 100% that they need to be at the table and they need to be, more than anything else, educating those of us who are to a large extent set in our ways, in the way we think and in the way we approach this whole business of energy transition. So the challenge that the youth are able to put forward to us has to be encouraged. And I'm delighted to hear you saying that next year we will see some change in this. It was nice to hear you speak about the fact that this was a seniors conference. So absolutely, I think it has to be there and it has to be strongly encouraged, not just in the form of moderation, but possibly also actively engaging them in this conversation that takes place.
Okay, I'm going to come to at least Alok ji and Dr. Jain about the fact that the policy making process, okay, which is what we said that we'll focus on this session on, because finally a lot of things roll down from policy. That doesn't really include the youth. I mean, I know that because as a part of the group of secretaries deliberations, I've been in discussions with both of you. Sometimes you've called them almost like a hobby and sometimes like ticking the box, okay, but really haven't we done? If we have to do something differently, what should we do? Dr. Jain, if you want to go first? Or?
So you are correct that when government frames policies, it reaches out to consultants or web hosts, maybe meet the industry federations, and so we don't look at cross-section of populations but then the policy making is for the younger generation, because policy is meant to be medium term to long term, and it will influence the lives of the younger people as they grow up. So a good policy maker needs to ask all the people he consults as to what does the youth want. I remember when we were making the draft national energy policy in the Niti Aayog, that time Dr. Vijay Kelkar, he had pointed out that today's mobility, if you notice, the young people don't want to buy their own cars. Buying cars is more of a, senior people, middle class phenomena, aspirational phenomena. But the young people, they want to go Uber, they want to go electric. The way they're sharing accommodation. So the concept of life already seems to be embedded in their mindsets. So, well, you have raised a good point that how should youth be formally inducted in the consultation process? Go to premier institutions or, there are so many ways of collecting their voices through the IT softwares and, web hostings. But then, as I mentioned to you, that a good policy needs to take into account the aspirations of the younger people.
Thank you. I think the goal is clearly set. You agree, and I think you've given us a great suggestion that going online and actually listening to that, and also going to these institutions. And I'm going to come to the point of institutions a little bit. But Alokji, any further points on that one?
Anish, I will not like to bracket the innovation with age group. It can come from anywhere. And for energy transition to succeed, it won't be possible without innovation. Whatever technologies we have, affordability, these do not take us beyond 2030. So my take is that for innovation to happen, there are a lot of things being done for ecosystem. Putting data in public domain is a key. I've been saying, even for power system operation or for any, we have so much of wealth of data in government system. When you are on the seat, you realize, but there is not even 1/10 data in public domain. So what I will strongly recommend that let all the ministries, all the institutions put as much data as possible in public domain, and then let innovators pick up. And it doesn't matter that in public policy you have to include some youth or not, because now the consultation process is quite vast. If you see across, a lot of comments come, and in the policy making we do take all good comments. So my take is that let us enable innovation and don't bracket it with any age group. It can come from any quarter.
I think that's a fair point. It's an unconscious bias, or I don't know, you could call it conscious bias on my part, but I think I'm glad to be corrected on that. But we'll continue on the theme of innovation, and I'm going to go to Mr. Singh. See, we spoke hugely about innovation. We spent 6 hours of actual time of so many people, 150 to 200 people in the room talking about innovation, exploring the various issues and where we get stalled. So I think that's somewhere I'm going to focus on in the next part of the questions. One key thing which came out is that you have now a whole body of innovators who are coming up, okay? And I'm not going to go to age, not making the same mistake again, but also then we have the industry, and both of them are vibrant, right? And Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, who was the mission director of Atal Innovation Mission, he was there yesterday. He mentioned that these are like two soda bottles, okay, which are effervescent in their own ways, but no osmosis between them. They're standing in two different places, okay? And so that's something which he said that let's find ways of how to bring them together. Before that, Dr. Mariwala was there, Harsh Mariwala, who's chairman of Marico Industries and Marico Foundation. He's celebrated, of course. And he said that the industry needs to let its guard down a little bit and allow the innovators to come in, because large industry is not it's not very easy to innovate in large industries. And we have our own defenses which we build up as quickly as we can, moment we see innovation coming and hitting us, till the time it disrupts us. Is that something you subscribe to, that there is no osmosis between the innovation ecosystem and the large industries, and the large industry just has too much of guards up?
No, Anish, I think whatever way you want to articulate, I think this was rightly said that innovation, it's nobody's fundamental right, or the fundamental right the other way, that everyone has a right to innovate. And innovation is broadly, I think, if we are just discussing as a practicing managers, so one is going in the fundamental research like the LED, whatever the fundamental kind of innovation which was, or the R&D which was done, but then the innovation, how it can be really just implemented in a short span of time, or it's how it can reach. I think this is one set where the government and these policies start coming. But the innovation is also happening at the ground level, which we call it, I think, then bottom of the pyramid. Sometimes they are coming, what we call it jugaad. That is also one of the innovations. So just the other day I could see that this electric rickshaw, the three-wheeler rickshaw, that's they are trying to put something electric DC motor and try to just apply on that. So that becomes an electric vehicle. From manual driven, it is becoming electric vehicle. So I think coming back, this is the students, I think they have more inquisitiveness. I just say that at least. And the young minds, probably they have the more right on this earth, and they have the more right on this kind of environment. So we should give them the chance to participate more, and then let their inquisitiveness start working and try to come up. And the policy thing what you just started should be taking care of those inputs also, in addition to what we are trying to say, that it is a bottom-up approach or then a top-down approach, and something the senior experienced people trying to put it. And so I'm just trying to correlate on those things. So,
okay. Can I bring that question a little closer to you home? Because I have had the privilege of seeing you, working with you, in particular in the last 8 years. And, NTPC has been, and I'm not saying non-innovative, but I'm saying a relatively traditional organization, regulated often, and that creates its own culture. In the last 8 years, after a fair amount of pushing by you, we can see that the culture has changed, and NTPC today is a leader in some of these new areas, including you've done not only renewables, but you've done hydrogen buses, you're doing various kinds of experimentation. And you have created almost an environment where it is okay to fail, which in the public sector, that never existed in the lexicon. It was not okay to fail. What did you do differently, which people can learn from?
I think it's a simple kind of, the first thing is that you will have to create a belief in the people, and they should be really believing you that what you are saying, you mean that, and then you are going to back them up and try to allow people to innovate rather than you are telling that what you have to do. I think in those cases then things will be coming out much more. And I must mention here that the government companies or the larger corporates have the much more appetite to experiment than the medium size or the private sector, because their motive is always driven by the profitability rather than the kind of serving the public. So we keep saying that our prime responsibility is that power should be available, it should be reliable, it should be affordable, and tomorrow when we are going to go ahead, there is no doubt that there is going to be transition towards the non-fossil. How fast it will be, how sustainable it will be, I think that is the only question of debate. It's not a debate that whether we will be going for transition or not going for transition. So I think if you allow people to just take up the projects, what they come up with the suggestions. So you ask for the suggestions from the company itself, from the building. There is something indirect kind of example which I can give. Even the people in my office, I don't just based on the seniority or based on something. I just advertise within the company that who wants to come and work in the CMD office. So similarly, who are the people who wants to be head of the project? We internally started advertising those things without compromising on their seniority, without compromising on their career plan, etc. So I think those things, when you start doing, I think then people will try to take up some kind of extra steps.
Couldn't have been easy. So just coming, Dr. Jain, now to the whole technology thing, which is expanding so quickly. And when you did at the Niti Aayog, when you did the pathways, the landmark work which was done on decarbonization pathways by you. Now today, if you had to do it, would your technology choices be the same or very different? That was several years ago, right? But would it be different? Because, how do you put the innovation which is happening all around in so many different ways? Carbon capture, and carbon capture is not one technology. Carbon capture is 15 different kinds of technology, all resulting in carbon capture. How do you reflect this in the roadmaps and pathways? That's point number one. And maybe for the next point, I'll go to Alokji. But
look, one thing which all of us in this room probably do realize, that technology is going to keep changing very fast. So, having acknowledged it, the projections or the models that you make today for the future are going to be proven false in 5 years to 7 years' time. So you look at IEA's World Energy Outlooks or BP's forecasts. Technology changes so fast that all of them seem to be erroneous and not a good piece of job done. So what probably I would do if we were to make one today, show a greater share of electrification in the demand. That's number one. Number two, hydrogen. The way technologies are coming up, use of hydrogen in steel making and in other places, is something which had not been imagined that time. But I might say that even 10 years back in 2014, when we made the ISS version 1, even that time we had acknowledged, in fact, probably we were too far ahead. We had thought that microalgae and macroalgae would also play a role in the energy system. So that has not happened. We thought CSP will play a role. It has not happened. Hydrogen was acknowledged more as an end use to absorb surplus generation. That if, the variability is not handled and the storage costs don't come down, of pumped storage and batteries, etc., then use the surplus renewable to split water. So hydrogen was looked upon more as a storage solution than as an end use. So this is too much of nitty-gritty. So the limited point is that some 3-4 directions. In biofuels, we did imagine that there will be solid biofuel, liquid biofuels, and gaseous biofuels. So it's now happening. So I think biomass has now received, thanks to India, an higher electrification of the economy, and third, hydrogen as a fuel. So I think these 3 things should be.
But you said that you were proved wrong on the microorganism, microalgae. Maybe you'll be proved wrong again because, if you go upstairs again at the innovation thing, they're actually working with microorganisms for carbon capture, and these can withstand extreme conditions. That startup which has been awarded has 18 patents to its name and scaling up very quickly, growing 3x every year. So it is something where maybe you'll be pleasantly proved wrong again, or maybe a little too prescient at that time. The moment time changes, that becomes reality. Alokji, in today morning when we were talking about how we need to change, we considered, I think, 2 points which I'll make, and that session was, I initially made a presentation, and then Dr. Ajay Mathur was there. He was commenting on the broader energy transition questions and pathways, and also the Africa and the emerging world issues. And then Mr. Atanu Chakravarti, chairman of HDFC Bank, he was talking about how to make these things financeable. So there are a range which we covered in that. But just coming to the point which I made, 2 points which I made. First thing is that the reference is 2030. It's no longer 2050. 2050, if we don't get things done by 2030, we will not survive till 2050, or will not that. And I think in some sense, when you were at the Ministry of Power, a lot of near-term policies were put in, including, especially given that we were on the track for electrification. And I remember that, current electrification, electricity use is 18% of energy. We were looking to take it to about 35 to 40%. Are we making good progress on those policies? Are those policies adequate? And do you expect that electrification levels to be achieved?
See, Anish, I entirely agree with Anil Jain Sahab that we have evolved our own model for energy transition in India, looking at our resources and our circumstances. And there are 3 main pillars which we have to say again, day and night, morning, evening: electrification, electricity greening, and energy efficiency. These are 3, we have 2. And I have a belief that if we don't prepare ourselves now for beyond 2030, we'll lose a lot of time. So it is not so that we should be fixated only on 2030, because preparing an ecosystem takes decades. Like solar PV we are enjoying, but it took 15 years. So let us prepare beyond 2030 also. There are 2 things talking of electrification. The key areas are, I'll say 3. We have to do more on charging infrastructure. So like manufacturing is taking off. A lot of models and innovations coming out. But we are not yet fast enough on rolling out the charging infrastructure. Second important area which India has not started is the electric cooking. Because that is a way in future India should work, because we are doing this PNG and LPG, it is good for some time, but see the import dependence on gas. And even the Niti Aayog forecast that in 2047, we will import more than 60% of gas. Can India live with that? No. So we have to do electric cooking and green electricity. But electric cooking we have not still started. We are still talking of cooking through solar PV. That is far more challenging. Let's start working on a mission on electric cooking. Those are 2 areas. And third is the electrification of industrial processes. I believe Bureau of Energy Efficiency is doing a lot. We need to do more. And India has not yet taken off with heat pumps. A lot of industrial processes in industries, in commercial places, other places where Europe has gone ahead with the heat pumps. So there are three key areas in mind. Fourth, of course, green hydrogen. I believe green hydrogen is also a way of electrification of industry. Because whatever you can't do directly through electricity, you do it through turning electricity into molecule. So green hydrogen, I think we are now taking off. One area which may not fall directly on electrification is the offshore wind. We made a policy in 2015. Now we are in 2023. So we need to be faster on such areas.
Right, and hopefully some things now are progressing on offshore wind. We need to still see the tenders are being
Actually, this is not a criticism, but we did our policy in 2015. We are going to end 2023 and we are thinking of calling bids in 24. The time is running out. We have to do faster.
True. I think that's true. One thing which we covered is on finance. You know, one of the biggest things which came out, and when we were talking to the young innovators, there was a fantastic panel of young innovators. There's Pankaj Sharma, who's from Log9, which has set up a very large lithium cell manufacturing, some form of lithium, variant of lithium ion, which is entirely on indigenous technologies, on graphene-based technologies. We had Rishabh Sood from Blue Smart, Radhika Chaudhary from Recron Panels, which is making low-cost housing using absolute waste material as input, plastic waste as inputs. And then the other one, which I talked about, carbon capture, which is upstairs there, you know, from using microorganisms. One of the things which came out is that all of them do good, but there's a question of finance which comes in, because finance follows safe pathways. Now, because these are safe pathways, if there is a proven model, if there's not enough risk, then you go there and there's enough money available. But many of the other things get killed, even they are good ideas, because the risk takers are not there, or even if they have to scale, the finance for scaling is not available. So beyond Series A, Series B, it is not there. So when I asked in a panel a few months ago, and Mohit is sitting here, I asked him, is there a lack of finance for new energy technology? He just wished me away. Now that there's no lack of finance, okay. But we were hearing that some of the younger companies, not younger people, younger companies, are witnessing challenges in finance for scaling. Is that your perception, Mr. Singh, and you think that something can be done, including by the public sector?
No, I think if you allow me, Jain, I will come back to this question. But before that, and I'm sitting, Jain, besides the two veteran policy makers at the Government of India level, and rightfully, I think the question, what we need to do about deepening and greening the grid and go on increasing the efficiency. These all things will be required anyway. But at the same time, if I just take this opportunity to just say here that I think we all know that the ultimate source of energy is solar energy. So all things, other things are the manifestation of that. So as a technology-wise, I think this, whether it's R&D or whether it's about the applications, we'll have to see how we can exploit that. Okay. So it's important that electrification from 18%, we need to go to almost, let us say, 30, 40, 50% if it is possible. But at the same time, we are passing through a very different kind of phase where our heating and ventilation or the heating and cooling load is immense. Whether we need to really produce electricity and then find a source and consume that, so there is a clear cut. As Alok sir just mentioned about the cooking, I think this is the another area. So we all know that the solar thermal probably is the best way, but it may not be on the smaller scale. So everybody's cooking may not happen. So whether there can be something, some other innovative things will start coming in which can really solve the problem to other extent. And industrial application. So that's also, Jain, it's not only the green electricity what you need to use, but maybe, Jain, you can have the green steam what you can use. So those, I think, innovation will start coming. Jain Sahab rightly mentioned that the 2-3, Jain, the early movers, which were, Jain, looks like that if you are talking about 10 years back, CSP was, I think the solar thermal was most talked about. And people were saying that solar thermal is better than PV. And if you ask me today, I would still tend to agree, may not be, because the technological development has taken care. But there is no danger of kind of creating another hazard after some time. So that was the beauty of that system. So incidentally, we have not really exploited those things. So some people should start working at the government level. We should really, we at NTPC, we are trying to take up those things. So those experiments we are trying to, in the few smaller things we will take up. But ultimately it is this solar energy. When we are calling RE, it's a renewable energy. It's not a renewable electricity. And we should start focusing on the energy. Most of the time we start saying RE, but we get to the electricity. Whether the convergence of all the energy towards the electricity will happen, I'm not sure. So that was the. Now coming to the financing side, I think then whether it is related with energy or related with anything, I think finding a finance is a very difficult task for any startup. Once you are able to prove, I think, and you are able to list your company and start showing something and a good kind of projections, people may still be attracted. But in the beginning, yes. So it is the responsibility also, Jain, through some kind of the government mechanism, which is, I think, is being taken through many ways, and the corporates like us, where we can allow them to experiment, and we also take up those kind of projects. So I will be more than happy to share here that if somebody is having some good idea and they want to incubate or they want to demonstrate, we will be more than happy to provide them the opportunity on that side.
Fantastic.
So this is what so the lay project, what we are trying to do for the hydrogen powered buses. So that is how it was coming up. And we are thankful that in the ministry always we got the help, whatever we wanted on these new projects. The cost of carrying the hydrocarbons, which are anyway imported from the Gulf and refined here and taking up to that. And if we are having a kind of the solar rays and the water, we are able to produce hydrogen and we run that. So it's not only that we are producing a kind of our own fuel, but also we are taking care of the environment and we will be creating many more jobs for there. So I think this will be a win-win situation for everything. The another point is, I think this in the financing what is happening and which on the feedback I'm just saying that. So this cost benefit analysis or return or IRR, whatever it is, that is where the problem starts. And in the beginning you can't really just, so some sort of risk money, or whether it's a kind of venture capitalist or whether it's somebody philanthropy or a kind of some kind of corporates who can really promote. I think those things are really necessary.
Yeah, I think venture capital has come in some way, not in the same scale in India as, say, in the US. But I think the corporates, in my assessment, and one of the takeaways I took away, and this is not about public sector. I think public sector is doing a fair amount. PSUs are doing a fair amount on this. I think the larger public sector outside PSUs, especially in industrial manufacturing, heavies, there's a need for looking life differently. That's the takeaway I had, including on the skilling issue, Leena, which we were discussing, where there is such a lack of communication. And the industry doesn't even reach out to tell about what it needs. And how, earlier we were blaming the academia for not reaching out to the industry. But somewhere yesterday came out in that fascinating session that it was almost like the opposite, or at least there's a fair, it's on both sides. What's your takeaway, Leena, from that session in terms of actual things which we ought to do, which we can take forward as an agenda?
Anish, allow me also to make a few points on some of the earlier things that you spoke about and then come back to this particular point. I do believe, I agree completely that, policy making obviously has a huge role to play, and that we are taking care of what the needs of society at large is. However, I think we also need to be careful, as I think Mr. Jain pointed out too, that we are not in a position in this very complex, dynamic world to be able to either pick winners from a supply side or to be able to determine demand and peg it at particular levels. We are not. We don't have the tools to be able to do that, and the only thing that we have in our control really is to be able to create the right kinds of enabling frameworks that would allow then the markets to determine to a large extent, what happens, markets and, aspirations and so on. There are many examples that we can look at, and I also have been part of some of the research in earlier times when we used to say that for rural households, 6 cylinders of LPG are adequate for cooking purposes, or that 30 units of electricity are good for consumption, etc. Much later in life, I started questioning, who are we to be sitting here and determining what certain segments of the population should really be consuming or not consuming, and then limiting our own thought process and vision with those numbers that we generated and said, okay, this is all that is needed and this is how we can provide it, stymieing completely the opportunity for developing new business models for delivery of solutions to these people. So it's just a recognition that we possibly need to do things differently at a number of different levels, and I wanted to highlight that. From yesterday's session, many things were there, but one of the things that did strike me, apart from what we said, was this whole issue of industry needs. This is what I want. And I think this is a problem with Indian industry to a large extent, and particularly with the private sector. It's not about this is what I want and therefore this is what I'm going to do to create that opportunity, right? So this is what I want, and very often this thing of this is what I want does not match up to this is what the people want. This is the aspiration of the people who are working with you or who are your consumers as well. So unless we have this kind of a thinking process and a matchup, it's going to be extremely difficult. Sorry, I did want to make one more point on the enabling environment part of it. Enabling environment I'm talking about across many levels. One is about supply demand that we spoke about. The other is also about technologies, the subject that you're really focused on in this particular meeting. So that enabling environment has to be created for R&D, which today is getting a little stronger, but still has a very long way to go. It has to do with incubation and it has to do with scale up. I completely agree with Mr. Singh that, this requires support. Many speakers spoke about this requires support. But the point is, once again, can industry be a free rider on a lot of these things? Or is there a mechanism that can be designed wherein when industry decides to step in and take over, buy over a particular startup, invest in it, etc., there is a return that comes to the public sector organization or to the governments, as the case may be. Do we once again need a different way of thinking about some of these challenges and problems that we have? Let me just stop there.
No, thank you. And I think that enabling framework is something which is clearly missing. And a lot of that comes because the industry has not gone to create. And what, after we finished yesterday, Dr. Vaishnav said that, would you be willing to step up and come along with the Atal Innovation Mission to come together and create a framework or enable a framework which then everybody can be pulled in? And I'm hoping that we can, but if we are there then, and if we are able to connect with industry, then industry doesn't have the ability to put the blame on somebody else and be a free rider. I think there's a fair concern which is coming, that industry sometimes needs to do a lot more than what is coming, they're doing. I'm going to open this up because this is a fascinating discussion, but we can go on for much longer time. It's not fair to the audience, which has been a great audience. You can see in fair numbers here. So raise your hand, introduce yourself if you have a question. We'll take a few and then close the day. And if you are directing the question to someone, just mention that as well.
Energies. My question for Anil sir. We have already identified technologies, thermochemical technologies for conversion of CO2 to fuels, right? So then can we see solar integration? Because later in, in the session they were speaking that we need to see renewable energy and energy transition industry differently. But then can we see both industries converging here, thermochemical conversion and thermochemical technologies at large?
I mean, I'm not clear about whether I got the question right.
It was about, there are identified thermochemical conversion technologies from CO2 to fuels. So can we see RE sector which produces solar and energy transition which is involved in carbon capture converging here?
So RE and energy carbon capture, can it be combined?
Okay, please visit our R&D center, what we call it Netra, in Greater Noida. Okay, we have already demonstrated a few things there, but we are going ahead with a major project which is called 10 ton per day of green methanol, where there is a carbon capture is being done, 20 ton, and then there is a green hydrogen, and then the synthesis is going to happen to create carbon dioxide plus green hydrogen into methanol. And there is another project which we are taking as, which is going to be ethanol. And the next one in the series is coming out to be sustainable aviation fuel. So I think then as far as whether any industry which is based on coal and maybe even refinery also, not only that. So there will be great opportunities to go for this so-called fourth generation fuel rather than the first generation or the second generation where you are trying to utilize your. So please, I think Jana, just this is very much possible.
Yes. Yeah, the mic here to Bharat. Bharat, please. Bharat.
Yeah, good evening, sir. This is Bharat Parekh. I head the power and the new energy research for CLSA in India. My question is to Jain sir. Sir, if you keep your regulator hat aside, sorry to say that, as a gas regulator, and if you think about the giant leap which India needs to take at some point in time for decarbonization, and given that we are like 10, 20 years late to create the gas infrastructure in India, and as Alok sir said that maybe we want to consider other alternative technologies, should we be investing this 10, 20, $30 billion in creating now gas infrastructure, or think out of the box and create technologies for the future and probably redirect this investment, which will be far more sustainable over a longer term? Basically the giant leap, if at all you believe there is one giant leap.
But gas has always been known to be a bridge fuel. So depends on what everybody's perception is. So natural progression amongst the fuels in the world was from a lot of coal, then oil came in, then gas came in, nuclear played a little bit of a role. If you remember, all these four major fuels used to be a quarter each in the global energy mix, and renewables. Now, I've personally written and thought about it, I agree with you that in gas infrastructure, India got a bit late. But it's not so late that, so if you talk to the vehicle manufacturers, they will tell you that in the next 2-3 years, they are going to be stopped doing diesel cars. And CNG is on a huge uptake. PNG is acknowledged to be a more useful, if I may say, better fuel Then LPG. More convenient, it comes to your house, to open a tap and you get it rather than cylinders being delivered to you. So two of these end uses in transport, replacement of liquid fuels by CNG, and in cooking, I think the role for gas is well established. When you move to the other two dominant consumption areas, which is, let's say, industry and agriculture. In agriculture, by extension, you talk of urea making. Again, gas has a major role in that. And in industry, we do know the term that is often used, hard to abate sectors, etc., steel and aluminium. So steel, hydrogen is coming up, and natural gas is a substitute at the moment. I mean, green hydrogen to my mind is still little farther away. So if you discount gas, then you got to stay with liquid fuels. That's the point I'm making. I mean, with almost 3/4 of the total electricity generation coming from coal, the day when renewables can make a big dent is a little farther away. So gas has a role to play, and the investments, as you said, government, I mean, this is through a bidding process. Nobody is bound to come in. So people are finding, business people are finding a place for gas, and I also feel that there is a place maybe 20 years, 25 years, and let's not prevent consumer from choice making. I mean, gas is being offered as a choice, and that is the role of a policy maker.
Thank you, sir.
No, I think we have to conclude, but if there is, I might just comment one sentiment again from the last 2 days, that if there is one giant leap which is almost like taken as a given, it is a giant leap of the Indian economy, with the kind of growth rates which we are seeing, with the manufacturing prowess which we are seeing, with the demographics that we have in the next 20, 25 years. This is going to be a much larger economy. And Bharat, if I can comment to your point, at this time we don't have the luxury of choosing this or that. It is always this and that. And we'll still, our fear and our risk is that we'll still fall short of providing enough supplies. Please.
Yeah, if I'm allowed to have this comment and request Jain Saab to, it's not necessary that it will be only supplying the natural gas. The reason being that tomorrow we may be a kind of CBG. So I think let's not try to limit ourselves that it will be only a natural gas. I think the infrastructure is going to be really helpful.
And maybe that infrastructure will carry hydrogen. In the future, we'll come to designs where the infrastructure will easily carry hydrogen. We can go on, but we have to stop. And this almost brings us to the close of Enrich 2023. And cannot be enough thankful for the senior panel to be sparing their time coming over. They have had their pressures on time, but they've all made time for us. So thank you so much. It was again a great close to bring all of these points together. Thank you again. We'll take a photograph and then we have something to